So this is the second video in the War on Terrorism and the Constitution. And the first case that we're going to talk about is Hamdi versus Rumsfeld, Hamdi. Now, this case isn't a Guantanamo Bay case like the rest are going to be. So what you have in this case is that Mr. Hamdi was born in Louisiana. He was a citizen of both Saudi Arabia and the United States. He was arrested while he was in Afghanistan, and he said that he was there doing social work, and now lots of evidence has come out, likely showing that he was there doing social work, and that he was a long-time social worker as his career, and that he was turned in by these bounty hunters. So what ends up happening is he's transferred around a bunch of places, and he ends up in military custody in North Carolina. And what the government said was that they were going to hold Mr. Hamdi indefinitely until hostilities between the United States and Al-Qaeda were over. Now, this is an important thing to know, and an important note on the war on terrorism is that under the law of war and enemy combatants, what typically has happened is that people can be held as enemy combatants, which means you're fighting for the other side, and you don't have to try them because they've not necessarily committed any crimes, right? Being a member of an army of a different side isn't necessarily a US crime, but you hold them until the war ends. Now, this works if you're talking about something like World War II, where there's enemies and they end, the Korean War, Vietnam War, but the war on terrorism isn't something that has an end date, and it seems pretty possible it'll never end. So the problem with enemy combatants on the war on terror is that these people are being held indefinitely, as we see, because still 40 people are being held in this war on terror. And keep in mind that Congress declares war. There's been no war on terror declared, so whether or not we're actually in a time of war is another separate legal issue, but outside the scope of right now. So what happened with Mr. Hamdi, though, is that he was being held as an enemy combatant, and he was never charged with anything, never been charged with any crimes. He was never told why he was being held. He'd never been able to talk to his family. He hadn't ever been able to talk to an attorney, and he'd never been given a chance to dispute whatever the US government claimed he had done to make him an enemy combatant. So again, the government's position was that they're going to hold him indefinitely, and he didn't have a right to a trial or to be told what he did wrong. And why Congress said that they can do this, and why the president can call people enemy combatants, is under the Authorization to Use Military Force, or AUMF, which was passed in 2011, right after September 11th. And what this said is that the president can do whatever he wants to fight terrorism. So George W. Bush says, Congress passed the AUMF, I can do whatever I need to fight terrorism. What I need to do is hold people indefinitely without trial or charges. So what you end up having in this decision is a split up decision with no clear opinion as to all parts. The plurality, though, so it wasn't 5 people all agreeing in one reason, but everybody agreeing in the end result, was that he was entitled to something. Now, he doesn't need to have, and this is what the plurality opinion says, he doesn't need to have a regular trial. So regular trials, like have a jury of peers, and things like you're presumed innocent until proven guilty, there's no hearsay evidence, things like that. And then there's also military tribunals. Now, military tribunals is if you commit different infractions while in the military, and so you might not be in what's called a civilian court, but a military court. So those work differently in a lot of different ways, but they're set up and there's something that occurs routinely. So what the plurality opinion says in Hamdi is that he's entitled to something, but it doesn't have to be a military tribunal, and it doesn't have to be a civilian court. You can make something else up. And he just needs something to, in some way, know why he's being held and have someone make a determination about that. There was lots of concurrences in the opinion saying that what he needs is just a regular trial. There's no reason not to give him a military tribunal or civilian trial. And some dissents saying that, no, you can hold people forever in this war on terror. So keep in mind, this is what we ended with the Hamdi case. So the Supreme Court basically told the government, you can't just hold people forever and never tell them what they did wrong and never give them a chance to fight it.